This is it. Cave. What's up?
Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Since I've been around here. Jazz Cabbage Cafe. And it's maybe the one in the first and third quarter, 3/4 of a show.
Yeah, we're almost to the second show.
We're almost getting to the second show.
This is a great one. We got a full house today.
When they say we're getting to the second show, we've had like 15 shows.
So they've all been part of the first show.
Those of you looking for our podcast,
sub parts of the first show,
you can find them on Cave Radio Broadcasting, caveradiobroadcasting.com or jazzcabbage.cafe.
crbradio.com, which is their new site. Music's off. and jazzcabbage.cafe.
That's correct.
Thank you for the narration there, Jamie. As I said, it's a great day today. We got this amazing full house here.
It's a great day today.
Yeah. We got Deb in the studio again.
I'm here again.
Oh, yeah.
Can't keep me out of here.
It's always a good day when Deb's here. We got Rick. What's up, man? Rick Thompson.
I am in the house.
What's going on, brother?
I'm feeling like a brick.
Rick's feeling like a brick. I like that. What's up, Jamie? Jamie's here. Jamie Lowell.
I'm here. It's been a little bit, it seems like.
It has been a little bit. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We'll call it a holiday vacation for you.
Yeah. Took the holiday off, although we called in last week. Right?
You did call in. You were here. Your presence was here in both the shows. They got to hear your voice.
That's good.
That's a good
everybody, you're welcome, everybody.
We are enjoying some Giardelli chocolate squares, and we get some pumpkin spice, peppermint bark. We get a little eggnog flavor going on.
Meaning that they were very cheap because they were the holiday issue.
The Christmas one. I just been into a pumpkin spice. It is delicious.
An eggnog. It's quite
no,
nice.
I'm not even
So, guys,
peppermint bark was
we do have our first caller. So, Heather, you're on the Jazz Cabbage Cafe. May I ask who's calling?
Well, it's Tim Beck.
All right,
hey,
Tim Beck.
Hey, Mr. Tim Beck. How you doing?
Hey, guys. Yeah, I just I just heard about your radio show a little while back. I'm really happy to see just all kinds of information, getting out to people and to the community. So I just want to call and just say hello and congratulations and we wish you well. We're really living in some exciting times these last few weeks and in the future. So again, nice going and much success. So, if you have any thoughts or questions on anything, always. I guess I'm pretty good at talking sometimes.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to home in on a couple things today, Tim, and you can definitely help out with some of this conversation. And in studio with us right now, we have Derek, who took your call, myself, Rick Thompson, and Debra Young. So everybody's very familiar with you.
And congratulations on your recent appearance on Off the Record too, Tim. That was very nice.
Great, yeah.
But maybe some of our listeners aren't familiar with Tim. When you guys should introduce the man.
Well, it was Frank Beckman. It was the Frank Beckman show.
Right.
I've been on Off the Record before because somebody said it was Off the Record. I've been on, but no, this was Frank Beckman. Actually, I was on WJR. It's a big station, and I was on actually 2 days in a row. I guess I'm Frank's sort of go-to guy for whatever reason over the years on marijuana issues.
Because you probably bring him a sack every time he asks you out.
Yeah. Well, I actually, it's a funny story, but the way I actually knew who he was and the way I introduced myself, this was years ago, and it was right after, shortly after the new, Medical Marijuana Act went into effect. In 08, and he's a pretty, I would call him conservative, more on the maybe libertarian, especially anti-tax side. And I was at a banquet for him, honoring him by the Michigan Taxpayers Association, and he was a guest speaker. And then afterward, I walked up to him, I introduced myself, whipped out a marijuana cigarette and my ID card. I said, Frank, take a look at this. And his eyes just, oh, my God, whoa. What is this? And, we bantered her out a little bit. I got to have you on my show. And that's how it all started. And, usually by default, I'm on the show because characters like well, Bill Shue didn't want to talk to him. Rick Johnson from MRC, he wasn't interested in talking. So
he's an expert now.
People don't want to talk. Yeah, right. So that's kind of the thing. But I was happy actually to see. I noticed in Mirror's News that today that this new U.S. attorney for the Eastern District, this Schneider, apparently he's not going to make marijuana a priority, and he said that on Frank's show, as a matter of fact. So. Yeah,
we hope that's true. Certainly, it would be kind of dramatic if he were to start making statements about going after these places at this stage of the game, and it might reflect badly on Schuette coming right directly from his office. I would hope he's got to kind of keep that realistic, not want to worry so much with the work that other people have been putting in and a lot of money invested to get this up and running, and to threaten as they are in Massachusetts, actually.
Yeah, and for some of our listeners that may not be familiar with the topic, Jeff Sessions just this last week rescinded the Cole memo and said that we are going to re-empower United States district attorneys to go after marijuana use in states where it is legal for medical or for adult use purposes, even if the action is in proportion with state laws. What we've seen in the past, though, even before the Cole memo, we still had this threat, and there was something called a 99 plant threshold where they weren't really interested in what you were doing if you had 99 plants or less. And that's, I haven't seen too many instances where I would identify federal action at a level lesser than that. So for the Michigan marijuana patients and population who have a maximum of 72 for a fully loaded caregiver, if you're, in compliance with the law, you shouldn't be running afoul of the feds. But that's not how it always plays out, is it, Tim?
and here we are.
No. Well, I think, the mystery to me, is at this point is, what's this guy doing? I forgot his name. But they've also appointed a U.S. attorney for the Western District, because Michigan is two. There's the Eastern and Western District, and they can't get any information so far out of this guy either. And that, of course, as you know, well, in the Lansing 7 case with Brian Basor and all those guys, they ended up in federal prison by the DEA, and this was the U.S. attorney in the Western District by the name of Patrick Miles. Yeah, he's
right.
Running for.
We've discussed this on this show.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So no, that's okay. We can talk about it again, Tim. That's no big deal. But we did want to get to Jeff Sessions, and that's what. And Rick brought it up and outlined it very well. You initiated it, of course, with letting us know that supposedly the Eastern District prosecutor is not going to make state legal cannabis his priority. They did. The prosecutor in Massachusetts is saying that he is not going to make that determination of. He's not going to leave anybody off the hook necessarily. Well, so it'll be interesting to find out. But I also just want to say that for those who don't know, Tim has been around on this issue for many years and was a very big part of getting medical marijuana statewide in Michigan by working years before that on many local initiatives to have cities allow for medical marijuana, although that was mainly symbolic, but still that gave the indications to the MPP and national groups and money that Michigan was ready, and you helped to bring them in.
He was my mentor. He brought me into the movement and taught me so much. Mm-hmm. It was just a great wealth of knowledge.
And so we aren't where we are really without a lot of work that Tim has done. And he continues to do a lot of stuff too now, but I mean certainly historically that's a big part of the whole thing. So, and you're paying attention and you're still participating in everything. Where are you now? What is your assessment of this?
I guess I'm kind of trapped by my own karma. I just can't get out of it. I cannot extricate myself after, being in this for so long and doing all this stuff. I guess for me, at this point, I'm really focusing, simply on this listserv that we have and trying to be as informative to people as possible. And also, people in the media, they still call me, on a fairly regular basis for comment and analysis. And, that's what I've been doing. I think with the current legalization, initiative by the CRMLA, I am not I'm not involved in it. They asked if I wanted to be involved, but I said no. I simply didn't want to because and I think I said to Jamie privately, I told MPP I'm not temperamentally suited, to be working with their management style. Maybe it's changed now since Rob Campia, is gone or something like that.
Probably not.
He's threatening to come back to Michigan with a different organization.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, I know. That's a whole other thing. But the deal with them, they've changed to some degree. They're not as bad as they used to be, but they still are always a very, very tight-knit little group. They're very, very control-oriented, period. I mean, you don't want it so much as twitch, if you're on their payroll. And it's a very hierarchical kind of thing. I mean, you cannot in any way, shape, or form portray it as a democracy. And that's just how they operate. I mean, they've been, very successful. I gotta hand it to them. But they're just they have their way of doing things. Period. And if you don't like it, they can play rough.
Yeah, and with
that's
whatever,
really what it comes down to.
Whatever good history we can point to that includes Rob, that doesn't absolve him of personal accountability and consequences for making bad decisions.
And anybody else.
That's true, but we should look at the whole picture. Just like Tim said, there's positives and negatives, and
historically he's done quite a bit, and I
right.
don't mind saying that, but I also am not real happy with every single thing either. So,
well, in our experience here in Michigan with Mr. Campia wasn't what we would consider to be, perfect or ideal. But then again, he has a mission to accomplish that, to a certain degree, does not take into consideration what the locals want in those states. The
right.
purpose
that's
for
a
MPP
national
is
strategy, and he's allowed to have it. But
he will
exactly
definitely tell you that is not the priority.
But my thinking here's the point though about this. He, some of the stuff he's done. I mean, going back, in history with Michigan and in other states, Massachusetts, on and on. There are other ways to accomplish the same thing. And what I'm saying, they don't have to treat people the way they do.
Agreed.
In some cases.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that.
It's not necessary. It's not necessary to victory. That's all. I mean, that's the only gripe I have, if you could call it that. But God bless them. I mean, they were the real, pace setters, and they deserve an enormous amount of credit.
Yeah, they did some good stuff
for
here.
getting us to where we are.
Yep. If you look at who their current spokesperson is, Josh Hovey. Josh seems to be a guy with some good credibility and some integrity. I think he's going to do well for Michigan in the 2018 campaign, because it certainly will be a campaign, getting legalization put on the ballot. It may require legal action in order to ensure it if we have difficulty with the state of Michigan. But, Mr. Beck, you proved that we can sue municipalities or state agencies that don't obey the law and win when it comes to marijuana.
Twice.
Well, that's right. That's right. They're not. The thing that you have to deal with, one of the ways that they crush people, governmental entities whose money is not the individuals, it's the taxpayers' money, but they have control, and they will use the legal process to break you. That's really what it is, and they will file frivolous, lawsuits, frivolous denials, force you to litigate, and bleed you dry. Right. If they can. It's a common technique. A lot of, folks that aren't deeply experienced in the political process aren't really, aware of that factor, and it's sad, but it's true, and very, very common technique. And I fully expect some kind of lawsuit to come up to keep this initiative, the CRMLA, initiative off the ballot. And it was stated by there's this guy Gordon. He's a member of this MRC group. Dykeman's a big law firm, and I think Jamie, you were there, and maybe Rick yourself. I think you were there.
Debra was there.
I was there.
Yes, that's right. And you saw his statements and his threats and everything like that. And what happens? Number one, I don't think they're going to be able to prevail. But again, the strategy is, number one, hey, maybe they'll get lucky. Maybe they'll find some technicality. Maybe they'll find some BS thing where it's kept off the ballot. On the other hand, they also get a lot. Even if they lose, they get a huge amount of media attention, so they can get their message out for free about the evils of the initiative and all that.
Right, and that's where the Truscott-Rossman, the hire, and Josh Hovey's firm has to come in and take advantage of that equal time every time that they spout off like that.
Isn't the city of Detroit is pulling shenanigans too, Tim?
They are, and we're going to talk about that. But I do want to get Tim. I want to get right to your thoughts, your analysis on the Jeff Sessions scenario. Ultimately, what does it mean?
I'm constantly looking for a silver lining, and I think this was so stupid of a move. I didn't believe that Trump would authorize that. I think there's all kinds of theories floating around, but I think Trump did give the nod. God knows why, on maybe a Pollyanna level. Maybe it's just to get Congress to get off their rear end, and actually, do something and deal with the question. That's really where it really needs to be, either a Hinckley-Rohrabacher kind of thing, advance if they pass into law, make it states' rights, whatever. But I think it ultimately is going to accelerate the pace to getting Congress to do something. That's really the reality. And we're winning this. And one of the things that people have yet, I think, where have gotten attention is the fact that Canada is going to legalize. I mean, all indications are the entire country of Canada is going to go legal this summer, and that will be a crushing, blow to the prohibitionist crowd when something like that happens in an entire country. And of course, Michigan's right on the border, so we're going to get a lot of positive media attention, on that one. In the meantime, as I said, you got to be careful. Again, because they may very well, like in Massachusetts or maybe even the Western District, I'm begging to get more information as to what this person is, their philosophy is. But if I always put myself in the place of the enemy. What would I do if I were fighting this? Well, if I was a U.S. attorney and a Jeff Sessions believer, I wouldn't go after the little guy. I would go after, I would do public executions. I would bust people, big players, or maybe even quality dispensaries and so on, bust them, make an example to put a chilling effect and put the fear of the law into everybody else, and that would have an effect. I mean, some people are just not going to take that risk. They're not going to stay in business. They'll close down, and I suppose that would be helpful if you're into Jeff Sessions' mindset, of punishment and hysteria and so on. That could happen. That could very well happen in Massachusetts. God help us. I hope that don't happen around here. But like I say, Massachusetts, yeah, and it's all up to those folks. That's what I see, but I do see it accelerating the pace of legalization, ultimately, and forcing Congress to do something. That's the hope, and I think that's what's going to happen.
It's also galvanized a lot of advocates and activists at large to get more involved, stay more aware.
Yeah, Dad, what we always like to do, Tim, is bring it into the normal range, bring it out into the public, and everybody's talking about it now. The whole country's talking about this.
And so we are about to take and one of the beauties of having this time slot, Tim, is that 420 is included. And we're coming up on 420.
Oh, excellent.
And we take kind of an extra couple of minutes.
Today
just
is
to
Friday. That's right. It's Friday.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, Tim.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all right. It's Friday in the southwestern corner of the state.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So we're going to jump to our 420 break. Tim, are you going to stay on the line and wait and come back and talk to us a little bit?
Yeah, you're
more
welcome to hang out
afterwards?
as long as you want, Tim, but we're going to take just a few minutes here and take care of business.
That'll be fine. I'm like I say, I'm on this tiny little cell phone. Can you get it and listen to the show from your computer at this point?
Yes. Yeah, crbradio.com.
Oh, okay.
You can stream it right there.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try to get it streamed, so that'll be a little bit easier because I can sip on a martini and
That's so uncharacteristic of you. You're celebrating the show today. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get off of the line and I'm gonna try to tune in so I can listen it from my computer.
All right. Give us a few minutes. We're gonna take care of some 420 business. Thanks a lot,
Terrific.
Tim. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Happy 420. We'll see you when we get back. All right. Well, we enjoyed our 420, and we sure hope you did as well. This is the Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Do we have a caller hanging out?
And we do.
Awesome. It should
Thanks
be.
for calling the Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Who do we got?
You've got Matt Marko
Yes.
calling for Jamie Lowell.
Yes. Hey, Matt. I'm glad that you called in. We're on the air right now, and
All right.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe. And let me, you can fill in some gaps, but let me introduce you to people as I know you. You are a member of Republican Party. You're a delegate in Oakland County, and you run the Northern Oakland County Republican group. Club.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
It's called the North Oakland Republican Club, or NORC.
Okay, NORC.
Which, yeah.
Might be a little bit too close to NARC for some of us, but
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, no wonder why people get nervous when I say that.
But you've invited me to come out and talk about legalization before, and that night shared a forum with Senator Kowal, who did a presentation on online gaming. And
Exactly.
at the end of that night, you took a straw poll, and it turned out there was much less support for the gaming than there was for the cannabis legalization.
Yeah, I'm surprised that online gaming didn't get more support than that. But yeah, there was definitely some positive feeling towards the referendum that you were presenting, and you did an excellent job, by the way, presenting that. Very well done.
Well, thank you.
And the people that came out, your supporters and all that they were very nice group of people, and we really enjoyed having them out for that.
You know, a lot of the things that Senator Kowal was saying about the online gaming are similar arguments that we use for people to accept cannabis, reform.
Yeah.
And
exactly, it's a similar. That's why I grouped those together, because they're, I look at them all as what are now victimless crimes.
Right.
And it's a personal liberties type of argument, and a lot of us. A lot of Republicans are Republicans because they believe in less government interference in your life and individualism, and that's all related to that sort of thing.
Right. And your group has hosted some heavyweights. First of all, in Northern Oakland County, there are a lot of pretty heavy participants in the Republican Party and in lawmaking in Lansing, and
we're very fortunate because we do have a lot of good friends and members who have become elected officials and stuff. And NORC, really our purpose is to educate and inform and get people involved into the government because we attract a lot of government officials, and it's a good casual way to rub elbows with them and hear what they're thinking and try to influence them a little bit if you can sometimes.
Right.
And as I said at that meeting you were at, these things all the meetings are open to the public. They're free. We encourage everyone to show up. We don't care what your political orientation is, because really it's our responsibility as citizens to be educated, informed, and be involved, and give directions to our representatives and stuff as to what we want them to do for us.
Yeah, and you've had Lieutenant Governor and gubernatorial candidate Calley.
Yeah, Brian Calley was out last time. We've had the Secretary of State Ruth Johnson out, who will probably be running for a state Senate seat because, every one of our state officials are term limited. So there's a lot of turning over, and this is going to be a big election year.
Yeah, you have
Senator just entered into.
Right, you have Senator Colbeck coming up, who's also a gubernatorial candidate, just
right.
Endorsed by Ted Cruz, and I'm sure he has his little segment of people who like his style. And then the front runner for the Republicans,
Yep.
Bill Schuette, will be showing up at one of your meetings too.
Bill Schuette will be there in February, and he is the front runner, and he was endorsed by President Trump. And so there's a lot of it's a good year to be involved in that sort of thing, and we're going to continue to also try to, in addition to helping people meet and know the candidates, we're going to also continue to try to make sure people are informed on the referendums. And as an example, in the February meeting, there's a referendum about changing the way we draw our political districts, which people have referred to as gerrymandering and the redistricting. That's going to be on the ballot. Those people turned in about 450,000 signatures. And so I've got the people that are that actually got that done. They're coming, and I've also got an opponent to that who's her name is Mary Tedder Lang. She's going to be running for Secretary of State. She opposes that redistricting referendum, and so she'll be our guest, and we'll have a nice debate about that in the February 21st meeting at the Pontiac Country Club, 7 o'clock at night.
That should be interesting.
And then, of course, once the referendum that you are pushing, once that gets official, I'd love to host a debate for you to come back, and then we'll find somebody who's on the opposing side, and I think we'd have a lot of fun having you come out for a debate on that.
Well, that would be great. I'll definitely look forward to that, and it could be good time because we got people ready to show up and vote for all the referendums and for their best-suited candidate and get a lot more participation in 2018.
Yeah, it's, and that's the key right there is getting people knowing what is going on. It's amazing how many people really don't pay attention to this sort of thing, and I can understand that. They're busy with their lives. But and then again, you don't want to be like a fish in an aquarium just wondering why the water level is going down or the temperature is changing. It's good to understand why these things are going to happen and having some say in the matter before something like that gets decided on. And you and I are really similar. You're an activist. You're pushing the government in a certain way and getting the people involved, and I applaud you for that. And it's amazing the progress that you guys have made since you've started.
Well, this issue seems to kind of go across the political spectrum. There's something for everybody, and we get when people want to kind of sensibly assess what's going on here, and whether it be the emerging industry and all the jobs creation and tax revenue generation and that type of thing, or the compassionate access to something that might work for somebody for their medical condition, or all the above. We tend to get a lot of support on this issue.
I don't know if did you get a chance to see that Sunday morning program yet on CBS?
Yeah, a couple of friends were on there, Tom Levine and Barton Morris.
Good guys.
That was very well done and informative. I was impressed. They said that, and you may have already talked about this, but the legal marijuana industry is a $10 billion industry now in this country.
At least.
Right. Yeah, and growing probably, yeah.
And you were saying that Michigan could be a $2 billion
when seasoned
into itself.
Yep, full legalization after it's had a time to get implemented and up and running. That's some of the projections are 1.75 to 2 billion.
So that would, if you think of a 10%
excise,
I don't know if you call it sales tax or excise tax. That's a $200 million shot to the state budget, which could fill a lot of potholes, I think.
Yeah, roads, schools, and back to the local communities that allow the activity, because it is a local option measure.
And I'll tell you, I have encouraged, and I was talking to the Speaker of the House, Tom Leonard, and I'm sort of putting the bug in the ear of several others that I think, and I'll try to encourage, I think the Republican Party in Michigan should endorse this referendum. And I think that would be good for the Republican Party because it would show that we're on the positive side. It would be a popular thing to do.
The right side of history.
And I think that it's a smart business thing to do. It generate a lot of jobs. I can't remember the number, but on that Sunday morning program, they said there were more jobs that are in the legal marijuana industry than there are in the coal industry, for example.
True.
Yeah.
So, and also I feel competitive with Ohio and Indiana. I was asking you about that before, if they are going to legalize. I think it would be very good for Michigan to get it legal prior to them, so at least we can draw some of their people in to give us some business as well.
I agree.
I think it's important for Michigan businesses to get established and then expand into other Midwestern states or other Great Lakes Basin states that adopt programs after ours. We've seen an exodus of high-powered industrial firms. I would love to see the creation of a lot of high-powered cannabis firms to bring the jobs here and bring all that money back home.
Indeed. And plus, if you think about Michigan being competitive with other states, we've had a problem in the past with with the population leaving Michigan, we're depopulating very fast. The more we can do to make this state attractive people to stay, because there's more jobs, because the convention business, a lot of different things, I think that will definitely help retain and maybe attract more population into the state.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Other states have seen that. We've even seen it under the medical program. I'm not sure about in massive numbers that show up necessarily in statistics, but a lot of people have come here for that reason. And when this becomes bigger and the industry grows and full legalization kicks in, there'll be more and more need for these people to come here, and that definitely will happen.
Consider Nevada, Las Vegas has a medical and recreational program as well as a casino gambling. Detroit will be the only location that meets that description, really, east of the Mississippi. So we have an opportunity to garner tourism here, unprecedented.
Indeed.
So,
as well as the convention business, which is very big, for Detroit.
So we're kind of talking about today in general about Jeff Sessions and his most recent move to rescind the existing federal policy on cannabis and allowing states that have a program or some kind of law in place to, as long as they meet certain criteria, which are reasonable, limit access to kids, cartels don't benefit from it, that type of thing. The pot doesn't go across state lines. And now the U.S. Attorney General has kind of taken that emphasis off and given more license to the federal prosecutors to go after these things, even if it is state permitted. Just want to know what your opinion is on that.
I think actually, in a strange way, this could actually help the legalization effort on the federal level, because of the hands-off way, just sort of let things sit sort of stagnant. And I think you need to have some action. And it's very interesting, the ire that drew from some representatives, some congressmen, including some Republicans, that were very upset about this. Well, you sort of have to get people upset and show them there's a need for change, because otherwise it's sort of like the Detroit Lions in mediocrity. You don't see much change, but once they get to be a bad team, you get some first-round draft picks, and hopefully they get better. Same thing here. If you can force the issue, and maybe we can get the federal government to change at least the classification of marijuana from Class 1 to something that's a little more realistic, or just to totally make it a states' rights thing and leave it to the states.
This whole thing,
so I think it's definitely a states' rights issue here.
There could, if there is real enforcement, particularly in a solidly defined, legal state, that will set the stage for this challenge. I mean, for sure, and create more issues that aren't really necessary.
You sort of had to have Rosa Parks get arrested in order to change some of those laws for civil rights. I mean, you sort of have to force the issue like that sometimes. You got to break an egg to make an omelet, so to speak. So maybe this will help force the issue in a positive way. So I don't think that the people in the industry should despair too much about what happened here.
I think we've seen enough statements from states' attorneys general that that are contrary to what Sessions wants them to do, that are more likely to result in what you're talking about.
And governors in legal states
there's been
are angry also.
Such pushback against this that I think we are going to see a greater interest in rectifying federal drug laws as a result of this. I mentioned that in an interview in the Detroit News the other day.
Plus, just bringing it to the forefront where people are talking about it. It's in the news. Everybody's talking about this.
Sure. Yep. And it's a campaign issue that I know a lot of people would rather not have in 2018. In fact, I'm reading an article right now from Metro Times from noon of today, which says, remarkably, Mr. Schuette has been silent on the issue of the Sessions statement. No news out of the Michigan Attorney General current office, although almost all of the candidates have been speaking about it. What do you make of that?
Well, I just actually, while I was driving home here to call in for you, I was listening to WJR radio. They were interviewing Tom Leonard, and he was asked about this, if he thought it's a states' rights issue. And he, Tom Leonard is the Speaker of the House from Michigan.
And likely a Republican Attorney General candidate.
And you're right, and he's also Attorney General. And he specifically said he thought it was a states' rights issue on the federal side. And he thought it's important for each state to be able to put in whatever regulations they needed and for, specific to the needs of that state. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of people, especially on the Republican side, that are big into states' rights types of thing. They think that they don't like the federal, the heavy-handed federal hand into what's going on. It comes right down to the 10th Amendment, which gives rights to the states, that says things that are not in the Constitution are left to the states to decide. So the 10th Amendment people should be very strong for getting the government out of this, the federal government out of this thing.
Well, that's true, but they should have been strong 6 months ago, and they should have been strong 6 years ago, because that's been a violation ever since. And they were not strong on this issue until just recently, which means, passive approval of a program that did violate those rules. So some of these, Johnny-come-lately supporters are just that. And they're...
Yep, I agree. But sometimes it's better late than never, though, right, Jamie?
Oh, yeah, no, we're making some progress. The needle's definitely moving, as we say here, as I say here by myself often.
I really need to check the history of what caused them to re-legalize alcohol after it was prohibited, and then there had to get...
Right. Because prohibition
to change the Constitution then to make it legal again. That had to be an interesting debate in those days.
And it's going on now because prohibition doesn't work, and the prohibition of marijuana does not work similarly, and all those problems are really coming to the surface, and people are motivated to make some changes.
When you see logical processes being utilized in an illogical way, it's because there's an unseen third force out there, and perhaps that unseen third force was business advantage by some, or the
forfeiture thing was making a lot of money, and they didn't want to give that up. Yeah.
Whatever those things were that caused us to behave in an illogical manner, I think now the haze is lifted, and we are ready to see more clearly. And hopefully 2018, 2020, 2025, we'll have a handle on this in a way that looks more like what other nations in the world are doing. Canada, as Jamie mentioned earlier, will probably legalize this summer. So that's very
Mexico is already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Mark, we're at the end of this segment, but could you let people know when and where your next meeting is? If you have a site, where to look?
Yep.
And these are some big time meetings, especially in this crucial election year.
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook. That's the North Oakland Republican Club. I appreciate that. Our next meeting is going to be Thursday, January 25th, and actually the topic. We always have good topics. The topic for the January 25th meeting, which is Thursday at 7 o'clock at the Pontiac Country Club in Waterford. There's legislation to eliminate gun-free zones in our state, and so we've got we got a speaker talking about that. Then we've also got somebody from the government coming to talk about job openings in the state on boards and commissions. That every year they got to fill all these, and we're going to learn about that. And then, of course, we'll have gubernatorial candidate Pat Colbeck coming in. So it'll be a good program, January 25th. You can find the North Oakland Republican Club or NORC on Facebook, or you can check our website, which I got to make sure I say this correctly here because it's let's see here, it's. Let's see, our website is, hold on here, I got to get back to the...
And certainly during the course of a search, a regular type of a Google search, it'll come up. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, www.norc-us.org is the website.
Okay.
That is specific.
So it's norc-us.org. I want to make sure I said that right.
No, right, yeah, okay. North
Oakland Republican Club. Yeah, and we're on Facebook.
.org. Okay.
And hopefully you guys come out and then and let me know when you guys are on the ballot, and we'll get that debate going. I think we'll have a lot of fun with that.
That sounds like fun to me. So that sounds great, and we'll be in touch, and I'll probably be at one of these next upcoming meetings. Thank you very much.
Great, looking forward to seeing you. Hey, thanks for letting me call in. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem. We'll
Thanks
talk to you
calling.
soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Great segment. That was excellent.
Yep.
Very good.
See, equal time.
Well, I mean, the free market people, libertarian-minded people, are right with the idea of allowing people to, to have something to
listening to Matt talk. He's speaking so much more progressively than a lot of the Dems that I've talked to, especially the local like Sandy Levins and people like this who would never speak like this. So I'm encouraged by that, although I'm not a Republican. I am a Democrat, but I am encouraged by that.
Jamie mentioned just crosses over, different party lines.
Yeah, most definitely does. Well, our first caller, Tim Beck, is a known Republican, and he's been in,
He's supporting Dana, as we've been discussing. Many people, Dana. Independents, Republicans, are supporting Dana because she is like the civil libertarian person we need back in the office to bring its integrity back to the office of Attorney General.
Especially with this Sessions crap going on, because you have to have a strong Attorney General in the state. We can't have somebody who's going to be in Sessions' pocket. We have to have somebody pushing back.
And many of us, and certainly not everybody, some people are very much aligned with the Dems, but many of us, if Dana doesn't get the endorsement, will look at Tom Leonard as the Attorney General.
Because we're not going to vote for this Patrick Miles. No. This is not going to happen.
We are talking about the Sessions. Let me throw a couple of quotes at you here from Michigan notables and some of the people we've been mentioning here in regards to the Sessions issue. For example, here's one. Let's see if you can guess who said this. A gross display of federal overreach for Sessions to subvert states' rights and return to failed policies that harm families, fill prisons with nonviolent people, cost states billions of dollars they don't have to spare, and do nothing to combat the real drug epidemic facing this nation.
Dana.
That's a Dana Nessel quote. Absolutely, yes. How about this one?
Don't I get a prize?
You get a prize?
Okay.
Ooh,
always a prize for you when you
Debbie's
come in.
Right.
Chocolate flying
Okay,
around.
now I'm going to start playing.
Here's one. How about this? The decision was an enormous step backward that totally disrespects the will of the people of Michigan. Who was that?
Well, that could be Dana also.
No, but Dana was much more direct in what she said. This is weak ass Pat Miles. That's what he said. Right. That was just.
I'm surprised he even acknowledged it, because normally when we ask him a question, he changes the subject.
Now, which of these people that we talked about today says in the Detroit News that they personally do not support the legalization of recreational use of marijuana? That would be Tom Leonard. Yeah.
Who is a nominee in the Republican Party, and he plays the game. His personal feelings might not be truly reflected there, but if he did say that he liked legalization, that would hurt his chances of being the nominee. So
Could be. Now,
maybe not. If people have the opinions like Matt has.
Yeah.
Certainly, we know he's a notch above or so Patrick Miles for supporting medical. That's something that Patrick didn't do.
But if the rank and file Republicans are on the same wavelength as Matt, who we spoke to from the North Oakland County Republican group,
here's another.
And the party uppers should be endorsing this also.
Here's another Tom Leonard quote, though, that comes right into what we're talking about here. He said, "I don't believe the federal government has any right coming in here to try and enforce marijuana laws, and I believe it ought to be left up to the state." So that's, again, reflective of what Matt talked about. With
it's also
Leonard
different
earlier.
than how Schuette handled the situation.
Yep. And by the way, the one of the quotes would be nothing. Who said absolutely nothing on this issue?
Bill Schuette.
Bill Schuette. Exactly right. Now, here's a three quotes. Let's see if we can figure out who said these. All right. First one is, "You cannot put the smoke back in the joint."
Rick Thompson.
That's true. How's this one?
Did you say that really?
I did, yes.
Oh, wow.
From Michigan Radio. Here's another one. "Jeff Sessions may not know it, but starting a war with the states over the legitimacy of federal drug policy is the best way to end federal marijuana prohibition."
Tim Beck said something similar to that.
But that was also me.
Okay.
In the same article. Here's
then
one.
You guys have the same brain.
"Doubling down on a failed drug policy is a bad bet. Maybe Sessions should talk to a gambling aversion counselor next time he visits a Trump casino property."
Sounds like you also.
That was me also, yes. That's from the Metro Times. I nailed a couple, 2 or 3 interviews on that particular subject, but
Nice.
For all of the advocates and activists out there, when media calls you to take an interview, it's cool. Do it. But one of the things you can do is say, "Hey, let me call you back in 5 minutes." Take 5 minutes, gather your thoughts, write down a sentence of what you really think summarizes what you're doing, and then call that reporter back. And then you've got at least one great sentence you can use when you're talking to news, and that'll help make sure that you get above the fold coverage, as we like
They'll
to
misquote
describe
it, though. No matter what, they'll misquote it.
Sometimes media does.
Every time I've been interviewed, there's been a misquote in the interview.
Well, we had Mr. Beck, as he said, was on Frank Beckman's program. Some other folks were quoted nationally too. We've seen quite a bit of Michigan action on this particular session subject.
We have and we should. We've got stuff going on here.
So much going on. So much. Every day there's something going on.
And so, of course, that butthole from Sam.
Sabat to Kevin.
Yeah, he says, this is great.
This
is really going to stop some of the investment going on. Really, Jesus, man.
I know. Well, I guess if you've only got one horn, you're going to play the one tune, right? And that's what he's got. He doesn't have science on his side. He doesn't have opinion polls on his side. So he's just got to rag on whatever he's got. Ow!
Those sound effects coming from the.
There's excitement.
Wow.
That was interesting.
The board over there.
I'm sorry. I'm part robot, and when I get excited, I do things.
Ooh.
What was that?
That sounds awkward. I'm part robot.
Hydraulic fluids.
Do you get to pick which part of you is robot? Because that could be advantageous.
See?
Yeah. Not a bad deal.
I don't know, Rick. I've experienced that. Never mind.
Metallic and telescopic.
Oh, my gosh.
Talking about that spectrum,
Jesus.
that cold spectrum.
Right.
I don't know if that's really a good look for you.
Oh, my goodness. No. And right now I'm sporting a horrible look right now. I look like Steve Bannon came back from a 7-day African safari and then went on a 2-day drunk binge. I've got this horrible growth of hair on my face, and it's all the wrong color.
Yeah, he's really gross.
Chunks
Jamie and
of
I are
different
sitting
people's
across the room from him.
Yeah, unwilling to eat my chocolates, I see, right? Oh, yes. You guys are not interested in taking my chocolates.
Flick a kernel of corn off of your chin if you don't mind.
Right. No. You'd like to think it was corn.
It's that hydraulic fluid again.
Oh, goodness gracious. Now, there's enough rumors about me and those toys.
What about some news, man?
Let's hear some news.
I can do some
got
news.
3 minutes.
Breaking news.
You want to give it to him a little early, Rick?
You know what?
It's up to you, or we can jab around about
I like
Jeff
to make him
Sessions.
wait. I like to make him wait.
Let's hold up, man. The news at 5.
I'm announcing it. I'm just announcing the news is coming up at 5.
All right,
so
man.
everybody stays tuned. We can bitch about Jeff Sessions a little bit more.
Yeah, fuck Jeff
so
Sessions.
So one thing that many people have noted is that there's no real directive. It rescinds something that happened during the Obama era, which is pretty consistent with this administration at large. But it doesn't say you have to go after this stuff, or no matter what they're doing, go after them. It leaves discretion, which they already had, because even with this policy in place, Patrick Miles, who we brought up earlier, still decided to prosecute, and the case had laid kind of dormant for nearly 2 years.
He gleefully prosecuted.
It just seems to me, and I've talked about this with others, that there must have been some pressure from Schuette reviving it in some manner, because it laid there with dormant, but it was a big deal at one point, and I think he wanted to see it through. And some, I can't prove any of this. It's kind of conspiratorial, but just given the circumstances, I wouldn't put it past him to have wanted to see this particular case prosecuted because of all the bullshit that they had to go through with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the one that MAC, our original industry association, Michigan Association of Compassion Centers, in which Rick was involved and I was involved, and people I work with at the Michigan Marijuana Law Experts, Wes Crumby and Ryan Basor, were.
That's what we sued the Attorney General over.
We tried to stop the Attorney General from handing over medical records. And Tim referenced this earlier. He called it the Lansing 7. We call it the Okemos 7. Mm-hmm. And he just wanted to just hand them over. He didn't want to stand up for the states. It sounds like at least Tom Leonard would be at least create a challenge if that were to happen. I mean, by what he said.
I'm unhappy settling for candidates that are the best choice any longer. What I really want is a strong advocate, someone that says this is crucial to Michigan. The voters of overwhelmingly stated this
you know what we have to
times.
do?
Yeah, I know. We got to get Dana Nessel.
Dana's it, man.
That's it.
I know.
That's it.
She is. All right, let's do the news. Are you guys ready? Since we made him wait. All right.
Just dead air for 30 seconds and then start the news. Go.
No, you can start it, and I'm going to hit you with some sound effects in between news segments.
Going to jazz it up a little bit.
Well, all right. This is the news, the cannabis news. I'm Rick Thompson. It's like July 9th or something like that, 2018,
Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
January 9th. Jazz Cabbage Cafe. I know.
I'm overdressed.
I'm in a summer state of mind. Let's talk about some news from around the nation, courtesy of Marijuana Business Daily. Indiana apologizes to 50 businesses they cited because they were selling CBD. Indiana authorities are apologizing to about 50 businesses after regulators erroneously cited them for selling illegal CBD products. Letters were sent despite assurances by state officials that store owners would not be penalized until CBD's legal status is settled, lawyers. Indiana's Alcohol and Tobacco Commission sent the citation letters just before Christmas. Oh, that's so nice. The letters notified businesses they were being fined hundreds of dollars for violations called, possession of marijuana and unlawful manufacture, distribution, or possession of counterfeit substance for selling CBD oil. And, of course, Indiana has been debating the legality of CBD for months. State passed a law allowing CBD oils for people with certain medical conditions. But the law, they say, is unclear about whether hemp-derived CBD is illegal. The Alcohol and Tobacco Commission told the TV station store owners receiving CBD citations will not face penalties after all.
Oh, shit.
Yep, Canadian companies, Canadian cannabis companies with U.S. operations. That was a sound effect? That wasn't Jamie just being mad at my statements? Canadian companies with cannabis operations in the United States must disclose risks. An exchange in Canada dominated by marijuana stocks has listed companies with U.S. operations to publicly detail any risks they face after Attorney General Jeff Sessions' decision to scrap protections for state legal cannabis businesses. The chief executive officer of the Canadian Securities Exchange told Marijuana Business Daily that the exchange contacted all of the CSE-listed companies with U.S. exposure. It advised them to provide a public comment on the impact the Sessions decision could have on their businesses. See, even talking about it, Jeff Sessions, has a ripple effect that you just don't appreciate, you little gnome. 56 of the CSE's 343 listed securities are in the medical marijuana business, and 17 of those have operations in the United States. Companies listed in the CSE are free to participate in the American marijuana industry provided they meet risk disclosure requirements because, cannabis remains illegal at a federal level in the United States. In an email statement Friday, the Canadian Securities Administrator said it had no update to a staff notice issued in October outlining specific disclosure expectations for cannabis companies. Now, Rhode Island, considering that could have also been a Jamie comment on my
that
news.
really was.
I thought that one was labeled as pooper. I thought it was going to be more like.
And you chose that one out of the whole list. Pooper.
God.
Good.
That was perfect.
Rhode Island considering medical marijuana deliveries.
I got a good one.
Fearful of how recreational legalization in neighboring Massachusetts could affect their businesses, Rhode Island's 3 medical marijuana dispensaries are pushing state regulators to let them start delivering to their patients. Rhode Island regulators are apparently in favor of medical marijuana deliveries. They're preparing to review the dispensary's proposals, according to the Providence Journal. Both sides are waiting for the development of a mobile app that will let the state's new marijuana seed-to-sale system also be capable of tracking sales made via delivery, and the new app will likely be ready later on this year.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
I do.
I was talking to them.
It's not the first time that guy's called me a motherfucker.
Rhode Island's a small state, but they could probably use more than 3.
I would think 3 and a delivery service out of 3 dispensaries. Man, they're going to need 1 million drivers. That's going to be a crazy situation.
That's interesting. Hey, Saskatchewan, let's go back to Canada. Saskatchewan gives cannabis rec sales and wholesale to the private sector. Oh, no. Saskatchewan's adult-use marijuana will be sold in private brick-and-mortar stores and online, the government announced, giving entrepreneurs in the cannabis space more opportunities when sales begin this summer, which means they're adopting more of an American-style proposal. Yay. Saskatchewan is the last Canadian province to announce their plans for marijuana sales, but major decisions on home cultivation, taxation, minimum age for cannabis consumption, and public use regulations are still up in the air. Saskatchewan, the whole thing's got a population of about 1.1 million people, will issue about 60 retail permits to private operators in the first 12 to 18 months, with potentially more to come, depending upon demand. And both wholesale and retail of cannabis will be conducted by private sector, regulated by Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority, according to a government news release.
Those crazy, lovable Canadians.
They always dress so warmly,
yeah.
Right? And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but Detroit did freeze medical marijuana business licensing process Yep, that's a good sound effect for that. They let the air out of the balloon.
What the fuck is going on in Detroit?
Detroit's delaying action on new medical marijuana licenses because of a pending lawsuit prompting fears that about 60 dispensaries in the city will have to close their doors to go from 300 to 0. That's a bad move. The lawsuit was filed by 7 to 10 businesses that were denied medical marijuana dispensary licenses due to zoning issues, the Detroit Free Press reports. The businesses say the city denied the licenses using the outdated zoning rules. Now, a lawyer for the city wrote in a memo to other Detroit officials that it would be, quote, wasteful and confusing to the public, unquote, to process marijuana applications until the lawsuit is resolved. Yeah, but probably demanded by law. Michigan has set a February 15th deadline for prospective medical marijuana companies to apply for business licenses, and that application period began December 15th. If Detroit won't accept applications, the dispensaries currently doing business under an old city ordinance would have to close by February 15th. That's 1 month from now. That's according to the Free Press. Detroit marijuana business owners suspect the city is stalling. Quote, their plan all along was not to take the applications, so nobody could stay open, said Michael Stein, the guy who's suing them and causing this whole problem in the first place. Detroit voters decided last year to roll back restrictive zoning ordinances, blamed for the closure of at least 186 dispensaries. Yeah. Cue sound effect.
It's no sound effect.
I love the cock.
Nice cock.
I had the Chewbacca lined up, but it didn't
really
play.
Bad one. I should
Should
not have said that. Last story of the day. Etienne gets an okay to produce expanded medical marijuana line in New York State. The New York medical marijuana company Etienne is the first to receive state approval to expand the product line. They can now make goods like lozenges, flour ground for vaporizers, but not for smoking, those dirty bastards. The New York Daily News says the company hopes to have new products available by March. Regulators recently okayed expanding the product line in hopes of providing a boost to a New York program that's been slow to get on its feet because you pass some stupid laws, idiots. The state program has been constrained by a limited number of business permits. Only 5 licensed companies are operating so far, and 5 more are expected throughout the entire year of 2018. And by the way, there's a decided lack of patient and doctor participation, too. Here's what you need to know. Etienne will produce a water-soluble marijuana powder. That's weird. A health department spokesman said that the products still need to undergo rigorous testing before they can be sold. And New York's medical marijuana program has about 40,000 certified patients, about 1/6 of what we have here in the great state of Michigan. And that is it for the Cannabis News. It's Rick Thompson, January 9, 2018. See ya.
Coming up not too long.
It was the biggest crowd in the history of any radio show.
That's right.
There's people waiting outside.
So there's not going to be a
He's
norm.
a genius and very stable, too.
So in just a few minutes, though, we will be discussing Detroit further, and we'll talk about Jeff Sessions a little bit more with attorney Paul Tylenda. Mm-hmm. And so we could probably stand to take a little bit of a break, get completely prepared for that, and come back in and really have a good conversation.
I would like everybody to know how special this show is, though, because those sound effects, that's for this one.
Another dimension has been added.
It's a one-time thing.
Level up, baby.
But I found a few interesting ones for your next news read. Just before it. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple blank spaces on here, so we're going to have to get creative with coming up with a few of our own.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Let's take a break.
All right, well, we're back. The Jazz Cabbage Cafe. The first one, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. That's for Jeff Sessions. That's for me.
Nice. I love that.
What's he gonna do? A little bit of rage.
We're going to hear from attorney Paul Tylenda very shortly here, and we'll talk about Jeff Sessions more. We'll talk about City of Detroit, other things, if you will.
Nice.
And he's been on before, and we had a good discussion then.
Nice.
Expecting a good discussion now.
Well, good. I'm excited. So we had a couple of things that we were discussing before. I thought we wanted to talk a little bit more about Detroit when we came back on. So until this phone call comes back, let me know a little bit about that. What's going on? What's the big issue happening down in Detroit?
Well, the voters passed a pair of ordinances in November, and those one licensing and one zoning, and they changed some of the details of the medical marijuana program that they had there in the city. But a new group has sued the city to halt implementation of the 2 new ordinances. Now, the city, of course, never really wanted to get into this deal in the first place. It was sort of pushed upon them by the religious community in the city, so they've resisted jumping in to the debate, and they've also resisted, authorizing the new business community in that city. So now the city is utilizing this lawsuit as an excuse to both put on hold the 2 new ordinances authorized by 60% of the citizens, and also the old ordinance they had in place before authorizing caregiver centers, which is, by the way, also approved by a huge percentage of the citizens. So now Detroit last year had 300 dispensaries in it. This year, 2018, could go to 0.
What?
Legitimately. Could go to 0.
That's insane.
Well, it's part of the article I just read on the news from the Detroit News. Talks about the city saying it wouldn't be prudent for them to continue to operate while there's an injunction pending against the new ordinances. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it, so they're going to do nothing. Of course, we know that the wheels of time continue to turn. February 15th is a self-imposed date by Licensing and Regulatory Affairs that says if you do not have your application submitted by February 15th, but you stay open as a dispensary, then that pretty much assures you will not receive state licensing after that date. So at February 15th, anyone that wants to continue to stay in the dispensary business has to either have that city authorization and their application in, or they better shut down.
Boy, it's changing every day, confusing for people making applications, confusing for the public.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Hey, we've been here without medicine before, and luckily found Jazz Club just a couple miles away, and were able to get a little bit to get us through.
Mm-hmm.
That is now closed down.
Closed. Elite closed.
Yeah, some other good ones that were responsible for helping people out.
Jazz Club was a big one, and a lot of people have been right down the street from us.
That was a big surprise to me when I saw Jazz Club.
But it's a good defensive move by the business owners themselves. If they know that there's a standard they have to hit in order to achieve state regulation, then they've got to do it. And if that means shutting your doors for a few months and taking a financial hit while you wait for everything to develop, that's what good business persons do. Now, not everybody would be able to do it, and it's ridiculous that they're forced into that choice.
And it's ridiculous for the people who have come to rely on those locations to consistently get their medicine.
But if they don't do it, then patients will lose in the long run, too, because there won't be anybody operating.
I agree. And
so it's a catch-22, and I believe that that's probably a lot of things that the government wanted it to. It's a cluster.
Yep. Now, when you look at City of Detroit itself, like we just mentioned, those 2 ordinances, which were passed together, 60% of the vote.
Clearly.
Yes. And we were told earlier today, Jamie and I had a conversation with someone that said that more people showed up and voted for those ordinances than voted for their city council person. So some people showed up and didn't even vote for their leadership. They only voted to say yes to cannabis in their city. And now they're going to get...
That's not unusual.
Nope.
It's not. When we ran the real quick throwback story, we ran the proposal in Pleasant Ridge. The mayor the next day came out, the Pleasant Ridge mayor, Kurt Metzger, and said that more people voted for the cannabis issue than the parks issue. This is in Pleasant Ridge, where a park situation is a huge deal.
Right.
We beat them by 10%.
Wow.
And most of the communities Deb has been involved in getting medical marijuana or lowest law enforcement priorities or other type of proposals approved are right on Detroit's doorstep.
Right on the edge.
Exactly. Border cities are close to it.
Sure, and so many customers are, we have to go across 8 Mile. If you want to go to a dispensary, that's where you have to go.
Right.
Yep. And in Michigan, for those of you who may be listening from out of state, Detroit, 8 Mile is a very famous border, but it also borders Macomb County on the east side and Oakland County on the west side, and then there's all of the western Wayne suburbs. When you consider that Oakland County doesn't allow any dispensaries in the entire community, they've been dry for a long time. In Macomb County, man, you'd have to go a long way to find one in Macomb County. I think it's way in the north of Macomb County. It's really going to strand an awful lot of patients. And those are the 3 most populous counties in Michigan.
Sure.
And they have, accordingly, the largest patient populations. So that's the greatest
number. To go to
number.
Ann Arbor, people are going to have to drive to Ann Arbor.
Oh,
that's what they're going to have to do.
Well, and what they're really going to do, and I think all of us in this room know it, is they're going to resurge the black market.
It's going to be underground.
They're going to give everybody in the
Hey, I hate
the
to interrupt you. We do got a caller, though. I'd hate to lose him.
Okay. Oh, Paul Tylenda? We don't want to lose Paul.
We'll see. How's it going? This is the Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
It's Paul. I can tell from mellifluous tone.
It's the excitement in the room. We know it's
from the happiness that is Paul.
You can't break reality like that. There's magic going on here.
Oh yeah.
Can't fight magic.
So, Paul, you heard the conversation we were jumping in on. Paul Tylenda is a well-known Grosse Pointe area attorney who's defended cannabis clients, including the Blue Water Group. He's been involved in the agro situation and just a ton of other cases over the years, and been intimately involved in some of the discussions that led to some of the biggest moves that we've done in the community over the last 6, 7, 8 years. So, Paul, what's your take on this Detroit situation? You're clued in.
Oh, it's unsurprisingly, it's kind of a mess. My understanding so far is that the ordinance to opt in to the MMFLA exists. It is effective. It was put into place and is effective as of January 4th, was my understanding of the date that the clerk was supposed to start accepting applications or providing paperwork. My understanding was that on January 4th, the clerk said that in no way they were to take any paper applications and everything had to be done through the website. Well, the website being shut down and essentially just containing a one-page warning or indication saying that the caregiver ordinance had been repealed and is no longer effective, and that they would start issuing applications in early 2018. So my understanding of the stall is that there's these two lawsuits, and I guess these lawsuits, who has standing and who's suing and for what reasons, what the real reasons are behind them, political, financial, or otherwise. The question becomes is how can the city clerk not issue applications or not accept applications, essentially not do their job, when there is no court order or nothing in place that's been the result of these lawsuits that says, hey, clerk, stop doing your job. My understanding is that there is this direction from the law department saying, hey, because these lawsuits are going on, you can't accept applications. I'd be willing to bet they're completely wrong on that position. The law department doesn't necessarily have the ability just to tell the city clerk to stop doing its job, absent some kind of court order or absent some type of instruction based on some authority greater than just these lawyers in the law department in the city of Detroit. It begs the question of, okay, what else is going on? What's really happening? And is there a way to get the ball rolling? And the first question that I had when I heard that people were trying to sue to stop the implementation of the ordinance was, okay, great. Someone's going to have to sue the city to do their job. Someone's going to have to sue the clerk to say, start taking applications. And I think that's actually an easier position to be in than suing to stop the ordinance.
Suing to stop the ordinance sounds like a multi-year program, whereas suing to make someone do their job seems like a more immediate result. Wouldn't that be true?
It's true because I think that the legal procedures and the remedies that are available to solve each of those issues are let's say, already in place. So, for instance, like the lawsuit requires a showing of proof or a showing of fact and having this judge make a decision on it. Whereas if the ordinance exists and you're merely suing for this administrative function to take place, you're suing for someone to do their job. You're not asking for anything other than enforcement of what already exists.
Right.
There's different writs that you can go about, getting to implement that and to go that route. That I think a lot of the companies that had been given the seal of approval by the city of Detroit, these dispensaries, these provisioning centers that had been pre-approved under the caregiver model, those are the ones that, by law now have to apply by February 15th.
Right.
You can't sue after February 15th because your harm is done. the city's retort to your lawsuit in advance might say, well, there's no harm, so you can't sue without any damages. But again, I don't think it's as difficult to sue to have someone do their job, or even to produce a court order to have someone do their job than it is to have a lawsuit to stop the implementation of an ordinance.
Right.
So I think that's, for whatever, if there's a political reason, like my understanding is that one of the suits has to do with maintaining the zoning. And the reason they want to maintain the zoning is because it benefits their location. So they're using that lawsuit as a way to eliminate the number of dispensaries and the number of competition in the city. So they're using it as essentially a market advantage lawsuit, whereas the other one is the community standing lawsuit, which is the one community member can say he doesn't like it and raise an issue. But whatever legal arguments they have, I think it's hard for anybody to go to court and say, no, the voters are wrong. No, the city got it wrong.
Right. Hey, but Paul, let me ask you. There are 10 currently approved provisioning centers in the city. Those are the ones you're talking about have to apply by February 15th. Is the current Detroit opt-in ordinance that went into effect January 4th, does that satisfy the MMFLA requirements? Because to me, I don't think it really does.
That's a great question, Rick. That is a great question, and I tend to agree with you because if you look at the function of how that ordinance was passed and the language of the MMFLA, did Detroit opt in prior to December 15th? I don't think the answer is yes. However, there is a memorandum that was passed around right after Thanksgiving, maybe right before Thanksgiving, and it was, I believe, when Butch Hollowell was still within the city department. And it was a memorandum that essentially dealt with, hey, we have this new ordinance, here's how you deal with it. And they broke it down by saying the ones that were pre-approved just have to submit the new application and then they're all set. These groups have to reapply. This group has to have another inspection. And it broke down how they dealt with it. So it seemed in that memorandum that the city had anticipated the continued operation of these existing businesses. Whether or not that would give them any leeway or any coverage under their state application because of the temporary operation in the MMFLA, I think is a different issue.
Now, are you saying that it doesn't work by December 15th because of the effective date of the ordinance, even though it was passed by the people in November? There's an effective date that goes past December 15th.
Correct, okay. And I think that's the pinch on a technical. If the plain language of, I believe it was Rule 19 and the rules there, the emergency rules, if that is how that's to be interpreted, then yes. Now, part of me believes that if you really wanted to make an issue of it, could you sue and say the ordinance was effective upon certification of the election results? I'm no election lawyer, but I think there's some traction you could make and potentially say, well, if the city dragged this out and deliberately implemented it past this cutoff point, which is what it was designed not to do, you could gain some traction that way. But I don't know. I still think that issue is up to interpretation, and I'd be willing to bet that the city makes it sort of irrelevant because I bet you they'll push their closure of the clerk's office and their failure to take applications past February 15th anyway.
We'd
so
like
they won't give people.
We'd like to believe that if it comes down to a judgment call, that the people that are currently involved in running the BMMR and the LARA would probably side on the side of approvals as opposed to some of the groups we've had in there previously. But Detroit may not even let them get the chance, right? I mean, they could just freeze everything.
Well, right, and that's the hard part is that because you ultimately need your permission slip signed by the city, if there's no one there to do it, and you can't sue them to make them sign it, you're standing in line. You're just waiting.
Right.
And you're waiting at essentially your own peril because now you have to submit all of the affidavits and say this is all true and blah blah blah. And then when you come through the inspection, your pre-licensing inspection, all that has to match up. It could just be more hurry up and wait for a lot of these business owners.
But we could really, we talked about this on the program earlier, we could see a situation where Detroit a year ago had 300 dispensaries, and in 2018 may end up with 0 operating dispensaries. Because if those 10 pre-approved centers can't get what they need from the city by February 15th, they would be probably best advised to shut down until they do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I tell you what, that's true, Rick, as long as those owners care about, let's say, the big picture or the long term.
Right.
As long as those owners care about licensing those facilities, as long as those owners care about, complying with the city and with the MMFLA.
Yep,
I'd be willing to bet there's a lot of caregiver centers that will, riot out into the sunset.
Yep.
And whatever happens with the FLA application, that's what happens. You may get like quick business changeovers where it's like, oh, hey, this place was a caregiver center, but Bob owned it, and then I bought it from Bob. Now I'm going to send an application as an FLA, so none of his previous baggage applies to me. Were you open before this? No, I just bought the place. So I think you're going to find, just like we always have, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to continue the cat and mouse game of if then therefore can I still apply at the end? Can I still stay open now? A lot of legal gymnastics as we're used to.
Do you see any zeal on the part of Detroit officials to actually go down and shutter any of those businesses that stay open, even though they may not, technically have the bona fides to remain in existence?
I think that to say that we would see something like we saw in the past 2 years where they were shutting them down at a pretty aggressive pace, I think that's done with. I think that you might see some things getting shut down because they're so loud and proud and they can't get their permits renewed. But I think that if nothing changes, like if there's just a freeze on essentially the marijuana department down at the city, I think nothing will change. I think all the places will stay open until they know what else to do, because as it stands right now, there's really no direction. If the caregiver ordinance is repealed, then those businesses are existing as prior non-conforming uses. I mean, they get this weird legal status that I don't think anybody wants to get near, because I think that the response is if they do something before, let's say, the resolution of the lawsuits or the resolution of what they're going to do with the FLA, any jackass is going to sue them and say, we want to answer from these lawsuits before you do anything. And the city doesn't want to get anywhere near that. I think they're content with the number that they're at now, and I believe that they think the number will only go down because of what's happening. So I don't know. I don't think that there'll be 0, because I think that the people that have, I don't know, the guys that have waved the flags the highest and the proudest in Detroit aren't going away. They're the ones that are responsible for a lot of the change.
Right.
And they're the ones that will continue, and they'll stay to fight. I mean, they're not giving up. So I think that's good. So you'll get a lot of answer just by the fact of, hey, we're going to show up and open and do business every day until something changes. And that something changes is a lock on the door, a sticker on the door, or something else. Because now we're safely, I think it's, at least in Detroit, this is an administrative matter. No one gets raided anymore for this. This isn't a real big criminal issue. So send me a letter. Tell me to stop what I'm doing, and I will. But until then, I'm going to exist as if I'm compliant, and, whatever the plan for the business is, it's particular to the business. Some places are going to say, we're going to close down so we can get compliance with the state right away. Some places will say, to heck with it. I'm here for today.
Yeah. It's there's so many things going on in Detroit. It's hard to focus on other things. But what do you make of the Sessions situation here? Jamie mentioned we would talk to you about it a little bit. We've heard a lot of different voices today. Mr. Beck was on. We had a gentleman from the North Oakland County Republicans, and it's a variety of perspective. Toss yours in on there too.
The more that I think about it, and the more that I'm sort of seeing other people's attitudes and where things lie, I guess primarily what Sessions did was overturn Obama-era memos, Obama-era ideas. So in a simple, let's say, politics in a vacuum, it's very consistent with what Trump is doing. It's overturn Obama stuff no matter what. It doesn't matter what it's about. So that's the political issue, is to say, if they're overturning the Ogden and the Cole memos because those were Obama issues and it means nothing more than that, okay, that's one thing. To say that he has, and this is the language of the memo was weird, is to say that he just put marijuana back up as a regular old crime and not as sort of a back burner crime doesn't really change the landscape, because his memo makes it sound like marijuana all of a sudden was this Class B offense, and it really wasn't, because marijuana really never stopped being enforced. There just wasn't a lot of funding for it, and the priorities changed because of what the real crimes were at the time, the opiate problem that came around.
Right.
A lot of here regionally, in the Eastern District, we have federal corruption cases. We have the Kwame problems. On the Western District and Grand Rapids and the like, they do more drug crimes. They do more marijuana cases because they don't have the government corruption side. Their priorities are different, but they also deal with more of an interstate transport issue, where western side of the states are doing western side of Michigan doing a lot of business with Chicago and the like.
I-94 corridor, yeah.
Yeah, so there's more of a federal aspect to it. So for as much as the Cole memo and the Ogden memo didn't really handcuff the federal prosecutors and really turn them away from doing the marijuana prosecutions they really wanted to do, the Sessions memo doesn't really oblige the prosecutors to do anything either. It doesn't require them to chase marijuana. It just kind of says, hey, y'all, why don't you remember that marijuana is a crime too? And sort of like this weird good old boy kind of weird one-page thing. It doesn't quite have the teeth that the statement of Session rescinds Cole memo does.
Right.
The headline is worse than the story.
So let's ask ourselves then, what advantage did Session create by making this big statement? Returning to rule of law is just kind of an empty phrase that a lot of times conservatives or law enforcement types will use to justify unjustifiable behaviors. So he stirred an awful lot of hornets up and really didn't get any benefit from it.
Yeah, and I tell you what, again, to go back and think of, do you remember all the rhetoric and all the crap that you were fighting back, let's say as a result of the Bush era, where this was all snatch and grab politics, where it was mostly forfeiture stuff, and they were using this as a cheap way to get money and to fund the system and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And now it's really a private prisons issue, and how do you put, bodies in the bunks of private prisons and things like that. It becomes a sort of a simple catch-all. It becomes that, again, simple racially motivated crimes issue. It puts it back on the use marijuana as a way to explore other crimes. Make marijuana evil again, so that it becomes the burned-out taillight of society. Right? You see this, and all of a sudden, I'm going to fucking make your life hell.
Right.
I'm going to go to town. I'm going to pull you over and go crazy on you. There's that in terms of the nefariousness. I mean, conservatives love that type of rhetoric because it makes them look tough on things that, obviously are important. But again, I think there's a lot of monetary stuff to it. But it's also, it's hard to take credibly because all of this comes on the opiates are really bad and opiates are terrible and opiates are killing people. Oh, and marijuana is bad too. It's just like, well, no. I mean, the reason we're finding out that opiates are so bad is kind of thanks to medical marijuana. Because there's this transition, because we have people who are surviving from it, because we have people who are transitioning off of it, you know, we're getting real live stories and we're seeing real deaths of regular people from doctors' prescriptions and, you know, people getting healed from a plant. So I think that there's this awareness that now gets contradicted by saying, oh, it's a crime too, or, oh, it still is a crime. And that's where I guess I'm okay with the Sessions thing, is that if his memo was a political reminder that marijuana is still a crime, I can't imagine that any attorney is really going to have their minds changed or their jobs changed or their work priorities changed over that memo.
You know, I think the overwhelming, the majority of opinions we've heard tonight were that this could possibly spur better action by Congress to right-size marijuana laws, because obviously the more that the light of inquiry is shined upon marijuana's prohibition, the more people come to the realization that it was done for illogical purpose, and to perpetuate it is to perpetuate that problem. I think we may end up benefiting.
Well, and that's the hard part too, is that you may be right, and there may be some positions to where, let's say, Trump cans Sessions. Trump could look like the good guy and win back the pot voters. You know, Trump could do something that contradicts this and wins back some of these people that he thought, you know, or that thought that he was on their side. So there is some advantage. I don't know. I think that the political tool of marijuana that is been pretty acknowledged and has been become more forceful over the years, I think this makes the issue larger so that you can, you know, use it as a more of a partisan issue and more of as a divisive issue, and it brings it more on the table, because now we were sort of moving towards everybody's okay with marijuana to now it's a partisan issue. Now you can use I'm pro-marijuana as a position politically again, and it means something.
Right.
Because now, you know, so that's and the fear is that in our political climate, like, you know, pot is kind of passé when democracy crumbles, you know, but it becomes one of the issues of liberty that I think a lot of people who have become more politically aware are going to latch onto. Well, again, you know as well as I do this, the marijuana issues come at a time when you expect a lot of Democratic voters.
Yep.
The marijuana issues come around when you expect a lot of social issues or social voters.
You know, conscious voters. The other thing is there's a lot of states in the United States covered by Sessions that don't have as advanced of a cannabis law system as we have here in Michigan. This could be a negative influence over some legislatures and some voters in certain districts that were fence sitters and sort of could or couldn't take, you know, marijuana law reform. When Sessions throws cold water on their fire, then that does sort of depress the evolution of laws in some of those other states. I'm thinking like Iowa. I'm thinking about like Nebraska. People like that. There's not really a strong push for modernization of those laws. So the advocates there are probably going to have a much more difficult road to hoe now.
Well, and I agree. And I've been thinking about this too, is that, I mean, you've been doing this as long as I have, guys, and the old rhetoric of, well, isn't this illegal against federal law? And you're like, well, yeah, but who gives a shit? Yeah. Like, I'm waiting for these questions from the city councils or whoever these government officials are who are less learned on the issue, who are going to ask me, well, doesn't the Sessions memo complicate things and do all this? You're not paying attention. You know, if you as a municipal official think that the federal government actually governs the way you do business in your town, I mean, it blows my mind sometimes to think that I'm going to have to go through and have this argument again. Like, isn't this illegal? Should we be doing this at all? It's like, God. And I think that was part of the intent. His intent was to throw ice in all of this. This was a huge chilling effect was intended by him coming out to say this. This has put a lot of people on ice.
Yeah.
It curbed a lot of the excitement, a few days after California legalization.
Sure, distracted us from Trump's latest tweet storm too, right?
All of those things. I mean, when you think about, the sheer economy, I mean, just the number of people that can now legally use marijuana just based on California's population, that's like, I don't know, 5 other states' populations combined. So the social power of marijuana access is huge, and he had to chill that. I also think that what you're going to see now more of is because, again, Hollywood's in California, you're going to get a lot more marijuana-friendly television shows and things like we saw on New Year's, where it was like, oh, you're in Colorado on New Year's and you're smoking joints, it's no big deal. It's legal, you can show it, not to blur it. You're going to have more of that portrayed on television, which will have, again, normalization, which will combat that chilling effect. It'll be like, everybody uses pot. It's no longer just passé, and for bad kids, it's as joked about as alcohol. It's normal.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Kevin Sabet fed into everything by saying, this is great. There's going to be less investment now. It's going to slow that down and all that kind of stuff. And there was the federal prosecutor in Massachusetts who says that even state legal activity is not off the table as far as enforcement goes. So that effect has been prevalent in some places, but many other places are still just moving forward and not really paying as much attention to it. We are coming. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul. We got just a couple seconds left because we're coming up at the end of the show here.
We in Michigan we've agreed to that. We know we signed this waiver saying we agree there's a federal conflict here. I haven't seen any real change of heart in the people that actually want to do this, which I think is good for the industry because it scares off the easily scared. We don't need them anyway. But I also haven't, the couple federal prosecutors that I know, none of them have really, like I said, changed their minds about chasing marijuana cases. So,
well,
good news for Michigan.
Hey, Paul, I thank you so much, man, for calling in today.
We'll
Seriously,
hear from you again.
Absolutely, have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Paul's a stud. Paul's great.
Absolutely.
He knows the ins and outs of the history here as well as we do at this table, so it's good to talk to him.
And what a positive person he is. When you speak to him in person, he's always got a smile on his face. I don't know of a single person. Paul Tylenda and Mary Chartier, 2 attorneys that I don't know anybody that doesn't like him. They're just wonderful people.
Well, there you go. It's good to be that type of person.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, Rick, Deb, this is my favorite part of the show, as always. I like to get you guys together and tell people what the best thing that they can do for this next week, to help us out with our cause.
Make sure that you're registered as a Democrat with the Michigan Democratic Party. Very easy to do online, or call them in Lansing, because everybody's going to have to show up in mass April 15th at the Michigan Democratic Convention at Cobo Hall in order to make sure we have the most cannabis-friendly Attorney General possible, and that is obviously Dana Nessel.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you have to have that membership application in 30 days prior to the April 15th.
Do it tomorrow.
Yeah, do it as soon as possible, and there will be a couple of events. There's many. You can go to her site and see them, but February 9th, the Cannabis Council, and then yet to be determined date, but end of January, early February, there'll be one at the Home of Medicine in Ann Arbor, too. You can show up there and fill out an application. It'll get sent in for you.
It's critical.
It'll be free.
Yeah, it's critical, because if we don't do this, we're going to end up in a very bad situation here in this state.
Yeah.
So my advice to people is 2018 is a year of action. It means you have to get out and participate in some of these meetings that we talked about today, the North Oakland County Republican meeting. Also on January 27th in Novi, I will be the MC for a candidates debate for the 11th District over the issue of marijuana, much like we did with the Attorney General candidate or the gubernatorial candidates debate too. These things are popping up all over the place. There's never been an easier forum for you to participate in how your laws are created and how the governance of your body is conducted. If you don't do it now, fuck you.
Yeah.
If you don't do it now, straight up, F the F you.
Problem is it'll fuck us all. That's what's going to happen if we don't get out and do
You're not just saying fuck you. You're saying
everybody.
fuck all of us.
Exactly.
That's right.
I'm not going down like that.
Yep.
He's actually saying "fuck me."
Well,
I'm not saying
he's begging.
I'm not begging.
Can I leave him with something weird?
Please.
Sure.
What if Jeff Sessions smokes a lot of pot? He's a big pothead, right? None of us know about it. Okay, and he wants all this. He wants the legalization of cannabis. So he does this random ass law that gets these giant headlines, and like the attorney said, doesn't actually change anything. It's just a headline that doesn't actually represent the true story. So he does all of this just for the legalization of cannabis because he didn't actually change anything, right?
I think that would give Jeff Sessions a lot of credit for being a deep thinker that I don't think he is.
Given his history and
a man can
statements
dream.
he's made
But
about
that would
this,
be cool.
it's probably
That
not
would
that
be
consistent.
cool.
And Freedom Works is coming up next, and
There you go.
we're going to have to shut this one down. But Cabbage Cafe, we're still working toward our second episode. Stay tuned next week to see if we get there.